Okay, so to start this chocolate sheet cake, also known as Texas chocolate sheet cake or Texas sheet cake, I'm going to add half a cup of water, unsweetened cocoa powder, a half teaspoon of instant coffee, and instead of using a half cup of water and instant coffee, you could use a half cup of coffee. So I'm going to mix this just to give it a head start. Okay, so now I'm going to add in 1 stick of butter, that's 8 tablespoons. Now I'm just going to melt and combine and bring my mixture to a gentle simmer. Okay, so I got it at a gentle boil or simmer. I'm going to shut off the heat. So I'm going to let this hang out until I'm ready to use it and let it cool slightly. You know, I typically don't add the boiling mixture to the rest of the ingredients, so I'm going to let this hang out for about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so for the wet ingredients, I'm going to add 1 large egg. Okay, so my large egg, I have 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I have a half cup of buttermilk. Gonna give that a good mix. Okay, so now for the dry ingredients. Here I have 1 cup of all-purpose flour. You could also use cake flour. I do that when I have it. I'm also going to add a half teaspoon of baking soda, a half teaspoon of salt. If you're using salted butter, then you can probably skip that. I'm also going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Now, I know there's a lot of sheet cake recipes or Texas sheet cake recipes that don't add cinnamon, but growing up, we added cinnamon, so I'll say it's optional if you don't want to add it. I can't honestly tell you what the original Texas sheet cake recipe is, but I've always added cinnamon. Now I'm going to add 1 cup of dark brown sugar. You can use just regular granulated sugar or light brown sugar. I love to use dark brown sugar. Now I'm going to combine well. Okay, so at this point I am preheating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. That is around 176 degrees Celsius. So my mixture is still warm, not quite boiling hot, but I'm going to add my cocoa mixture right into the flour. And this will help sort of cool it off before I add the rest of the buttermilk egg mixture. You don't want to cook your eggs in a hot liquid. So let's give that a mix. It smells great already. So now add your buttermilk egg vanilla mixture. Oh, don't do that. There we go. Now give everything a really good mix. Here I have a 9 by 13 baking pan that I've sprayed with cooking spray and kind of swiped it around to make sure everything was coated. Now just add in your cake batter. Okay, so typically if you double this recipe, it will fit in a 10 by 15 by 2 inch jelly roll pan. You want to make sure if you double it and you use a 10 by 15, it has a 2 inch side, because the cookie sheet or the baking sheet kind will not be tall enough when you pour over the icing. So just bear that in mind. But this recipe is perfect for a sheet cake in a 9 by 13. So I'm going to put this in a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes. Okay, so into the oven, 350 degrees until the toothpick comes out clean. Okay, so my cake is done, and it is a little lopsided. Such is life. But But I am going to let this set and cool for about 10 minutes. I do want to pour on the icing while the cake is still warm, because eventually once the icing cools and sets, it really gives it that glassy, smooth look to the icing. So I'm just going to let this hang out until I'm done creating the icing. Okay, so I'm going to get my ingredients ready for the icing to this cake. So here I have 1 3/4 cup of powdered sugar, unsweetened cocoa powder. Now just run it through your fine wire mesh strainer. I'm going to try not to make a disaster, but this actually removes the lumps and makes it a lot smoother when you're making this in the saucepan. Okay, so I'm going to use this whisk and pot that I used earlier. Let's turn on my stove here. I'm going to use a medium heat, and I'm going to add evaporated milk. You could use whole milk. I'm also going to add 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Okay, that has a head start. So now what I'm going to do is add my powdered sugar and cocoa, unsweetened cocoa mixture right into the saucepan. And I'm not really going to bring this to a boil. I just want everything to warm through, melt, and combine. Okay, so this is nice, smooth, and creamy. And it never really came up to simmer, which I don't want that to happen, honestly. I just want everything to sort of combine, melt, and get smooth and creamy there. So I'm going to shut off the heat, and I'm going to add a pinch of salt because I am using unsalted butter. If you're using salted butter for this, then skip that part. And I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Give that a mix, and that is it. Now you'll want to pour this. I'm going to let this set for about 1 minute or so and then pour it over my warm cake. Okay, so my cake is still warm. I let it set for about 15 minutes, and my icing has set and cooled for about 5 minutes, but it's still warm, and I'm going to add it right onto my cake. So at this point, you'll want to just kind of gently make sure everything is covered, and then you're going to set for at least an hour or so. You want to make sure everything cools completely, and the icing is just going to set so beautifully on your cake. Okay, so I let this set for a little over an hour, and it's still not where I like it to be, where you get that crackled icing. Typically, once it completely cools and comes to room temperature, I like to put it in the refrigerator for another hour. So I'm just going to cut into it and I'll show you guys. And you actually can serve this warm. I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.